I said I was done. I said I would never dive back into this Forsaken subject. I said I was never to delve back into the depths of this horrid topic, and I should just enjoy this fun, brand new DLC for Risk of Rain 2. And yet, here I am, again, doing what I always do, again. I'm gonna talk about Risk of Rain 2 on console, yay! For a quick refresher, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, I have repeatedly made videos about the, not-so-good state of Risk of Rain 2 on console. Not because I just loathe Risk of Rain 2 or Hobo Games, but because time after time, the issue just seems to reinflate itself up over and over again. And of course, it's happening again, but this time with potentially more magnitude than ever before. Why is the magnitude so large this time? Well, because this time, the console issue is tied to one of the largest content additions Risk of Rain 2 has ever seen, the new paid DLC. Just over a week before I'm recording this, the Risk of Rain 2 Dev Thoughts number 21 was released, and one of its main subjects was details on the new paid DLC. We got a sort of clear picture of exactly how large the DLC was, when it was planned to be released, and a couple of sneak peeks at some of its contents. And while that's all fine and dandy, the Dev Thoughts actually filled me with more dread than anticipation. Because while it did give us a lot of good info about the DLC, it omitted the one thing I really wanted, or rather needed, to see on it: a segment about the DLC on console. There was nothing pertaining to the DLC on console on that Dev Thoughts. Nothing. Now I know, it's DLC for all platforms, so why would they include a segment for console specifically? Well, because Risk of Rain 2, and more specifically the team at Gearbox, seem to have this little silly thing they do with new Risk of Rain 2 content. Absolutely break it on console. I mean, just take a glance at the anniversary update on console, even after its first patch. It was, and to an extent still is, broken. Bug after bug after bug, so many that a giant note list could be made with just some of them. And this wasn't the only instance either. This series of bugged updates on consoles happened with Risk of Rain 2 on console since its beginnings. So, knowing this, and seeing as there is nothing pertaining to the development of the console port for the DLC on the Dev Thoughts, I am, maybe wrongly, but still am, inclined to believe we just might have the same bug catastrophe happen to the Risk of Rain 2 paid DLC on console. Of course, in this situation, I don't really know for sure, since the DLC won't release until next year, but a lot of signs are pointing to the fact that the DLC might just be the next biggest anniversary update mess for console. And seeing what the anniversary update did to the console community, if I'm right, this DLC might just lead to a sort of collapse of Risk of Rain 2 on console. So, what sort of signs of the console DLC being the next Duke Nukem Forever of Risk of Rain 2 am I talking about exactly? Well, first off, it would sadly just kinda make sense. I know that's incredibly pessimistic, but the trend has always just been that any new, especially large new content added to Risk of Rain 2 always works relatively well on PC and does not work on console. This happened in the 1.0 update, to an extent the Skills and Hidden Realm updates, and of course in the Anniversary update. Every single time, the community has pretty clearly voiced disdain for the bugs, and yet the bugs just keep coming. Heck, plenty of the bugs in the console anniversary update are still in the game as of this recording, even though tons of people have been very public with complaints and sent probably thousands of tickets to Gearbox about it. Of course, I could go on about Gearbox and who's to blame for the bugs and the whole surrounding bug situation, but what's important right now is that there is a high probability that the new DLC will undergo the same buggy broken fate as every large update on console if something isn't done about it. It's just statistics. The trend has always followed the same path, and without change, it's probably gonna happen again. And Risk of Rain 2 and Hobo Games cannot afford to have this happen again. There is already tons of annoyed pressure built up from the previous buggy updates and especially the anniversary update. And more importantly, the DLC is not free this time around, it's paid DLC, meaning that if it's buggy, as all added content to Risk of Rain 2 on console has been, people will have wasted their money on it. At least the other broken updates were free, so we could just be angry that they were buggy. But if this DLC flops on console, people aren't only going to be mad at it, they're going to want their money back or flat out just not buy the DLC at all in the first place. However, to add a sort of positive note to this rant I've got going, I do sort of have faith that Gearbox and Hobo Games might just up their game this time with the console DLC. I say this to myself like every single time a big update rolls around, but I'm saying it with a little more confidence this time. That is mostly because of the anniversary update. That update was probably the most buggy mess console has ever seen, and it definitely caused a big stir in the console community, a stir still continuing to the day of this recording in fact. And I believe that Hobo Games has to have seen that. I hope that they can take that knowledge and realize that change might just need to happen with this upcoming DLC, lest they go through the entire anniversary update mess all over again, except this time with much larger magnitude. Now I know, it's Gearbox who handles supports, and so it's not like Hobo Games can just snap their fingers and make it all better on a whim, but there has to be something they can do if the DLC on console is gonna be like the anniversary update again. Hire another team, expand the existing Gearbox team, go to a new company for ports, something. Maybe they already did something, maybe the DLC on console is being perfected to perfection as I speak, but the data stands that that chance without change is unlikely. Now, as of now, Hopo Games and Gearbox are actually already kinda taking the right steps, which is good. They did push back the DLC to release Q1 of 2022 as opposed to Q4 of this year. If everything goes as planned, both the PC and console versions of the DLC will release simultaneously, so while that delay might not have been for console specifically, it's still something. More time for polish all around, and hopefully some of that polish goes to the console port. But delays like this can only do so much, especially a delay as slight as this one, so I suspect that something needs to be done to ensure that the DLC is just as good on console as on PC. I mean, I think I can speak for the whole console community when I say we are pretty fed up with the bug situation on console, or at least I am. Maybe it's picky, and maybe it's downright harsh of me to think that, but I'm personally just so done with the constant bugs on console, especially in the anniversary update, and I'm so ready for change. I get that the problem is with Gearbox, and that's not in Hopo Games' full control, but still, me no likey many bugs. It's like me and the console community are this huge, already kinda cracked dam, and the anniversary update just spiked a hole all over one side. If the console DLC comes in and makes another hole, that dam might just collapse entirely, regardless of who maintains it. It seems like that DLC hole is already primed to be made if no changes are made to the DLC. So unless Gearbox has really shown through this time and that DLC is already perfect, which does not have a likely chance of being true, something's gotta happen with this DLC to make sure that it is good to go on console on release. I don't even care what it is at this point, just something. As for my own ideas of how to do that, I have one big one. Honestly, at this point, I am way past being annoyed that PC updates usually come before console, and I assume many other console players may agree with me. In my opinion, a longer developed, better quality console update is much more welcome than a rushed, buggy update. If Gearbox has to push the console DLC release far back behind the PC release, or heck, push both of them back again just to make sure the DLC is good to go on both, they might just want to consider doing that. As it is, I'm kinda worried about that extra pressure to have both the console and PC versions of the DLC release at the same time. The last thing I want is more incentive for Gearbox to rush this update for console, especially considering how the updates have gone over without that extra pressure. I love the initiative to have both versions released simultaneously, but if that's at the consequence of quality for console, heck, even for PC too, I think they can slack there. Luckily, it kinda looks like Hopo Games and Gearbox might have done or planned to do something like this. There was no mention of a simultaneous release for both versions in the Dev Thoughts number 21, and while there was no mention of a separate release either, I feel like they would have restated that both versions were being released simultaneously if that was the case. Granted, there was nothing about console at all on that update, but the simultaneous release seems like an important universal thing to include as it pertains to both PC and console alike. It's very possible that I'm wrong and it's just understood that they were released simultaneously, but the last time that was explicitly stated to my knowledge was like 7 months ago in the Dev Thoughts number 20, which was a good long time ago, enough for even me to forget about the simultaneous release and have to check again if it was true. Maybe the simultaneous release was mentioned again after the Dev Thoughts 20 in some Risk of Rain 2 social media outlet and I just missed it. But at that point, why not add it to the Dev Thoughts 21 for extra measure to make sure everyone sees it? So oddly enough, I'm hoping the release actually isn't simultaneous, unless Gearbox can do that with good quality for console, which I'm kinda doubtful of considering their history. I'm sorry. I know I've been ranting and raving about Risk of Rain 2 on console for months now, but I feel like I'm justified every time I do it, this time included, even though I'm probably not. But I just think that the DLC on console by all means cannot be what the anniversary update was. The console community is already heavily strained from the anniversary update, and if the DLC flops, things are going to get worse. And considering the track record of console updates for Risk of Rain 2, I have this sneaky little feeling that we might be on the track to that catastrophe if nothing changes with the development of the console DLC. So hopefully, fingers crossed, something changes in the development of the console DLC, whether that's pushing the console DLC release behind the PC release or something else that will ensure that the DLC on console isn't buggy, or by some means, it's already perfect on both console and PC and I was wrong to think all of this and I'm being paranoid. So, my dear friends, what do you think about this new DLC? Am I overreacting about it, pointing to a notion that isn't really there? Will the DLC flop? Will it not? Please let me know in the comments. Okay, so I've been thinking about all of this, and I've got an idea. A deal, if you will. So here's the deal. If the DLC on console becomes a new anniversary update in terms of bugs, I get full permission to be angry about that, make videos about that, and justify this video's existence. If the DLC is not the new anniversary update in terms of bugs, then I have to issue an apology for the video to Hopo Games. But if the DLC is not the new anniversary update in terms of bugs, and it's somehow in any magnitude because of changes made in the development of the DLC porting, I get a pass. Deal? Deal. Everyone remind me, I'll set a reminder on my phone and start writing an apology. Until next time, see ya.